Okay, welcome back to Space Engineer's Beginner's Guide. Now, last episode we looked briefly at the refinery, the assembler, cargo container, and how they all interact, as well as the basics of utilising the conveyor system, conveyor junction, conveyor piping, to actually pipe them all up so that they can all work in unison with one another. Now, I thought I'd probably continue along that theme and highlight a bit more about what we can do with our refineries and our assemblers in particular. Oh, that's right, we also put an arc furnace around the back there for that full refining experience. Anyway, as we mentioned last episode, these small ports here are utilised for upgrades. Now, if we just change over to a new toolbar and go into our tool selection here, on the same line as our refineries, we've got a speed module, which will add that, a yield module, and a power efficiency module. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about what each of these do, only because I only know in a broadest of sense. But suffice it to say, speed module, the first one up, it makes things go faster. Our second one, our yield module, of course, makes it produce more. And our third one, from what I understand, it means that it uses less power for what it needs to do, as the power efficiency actually implies. Now, this is just my own personal layout and my personal combination of these elements for refineries, and I find it works quite well for me. I generally place 2 speed modules, so we speed it up 2 times. We put 1 yield module and 1 power efficiency. Now that's just for refineries. And of course, if we go into our refinery, let's just come down here, go into our console, we can now see that productivity is now 300% normal. So we've sped it up 3 times. Effectiveness is 119%, so we've added only a 19% increase on yield. It's quite minimal really, but it's better than nothing. And power efficiency it's 150% more efficient now, so we've picked up 50% again on efficiency as based on the base object. Now, as for our assemblers, we established that this assembler was actually in the wrong position. We can't actually upgrade it on this side, so I'm just going to move that. Just bear with me. Let's use that will do. Get rid of you, extend you out 1, and put our assembler back on there. There we go. Now we can access all the upgrade slots on our assembler. Now, for the assembler, it's a little bit different. Only 2 of the upgrade modules are valid for an assembler. I believe the power efficiency module is not available. Oh, crumbs, it's been a while since I've used them. I can't recall off the top of my head. No. No, it looks like it's... Let's just place that and see what it tells us. Okay, now power efficiency seems to be fine, although we're just going to remove that so we can just double check. See, had no effect. Power efficiency had no effect. So only the yield and speed modules actually work for an assembler. So what I like to do, again, this is just my personal preference, I actually put 3. Okay, so it's not going to want to attach that side. We put 3 of the speed modules, there we go, and 1 of the yield modules. When I get the opportunity, that is, to actually fully upgrade an assembler, I get 3 speed and 1 yield. And as you can see now, we've got 400% productivity. No, it's the yield module that's compatible. Okay. See, I don't actually fully upgrade them all that often. Normally, I only get access to 2 of the sides because I pack them pretty tight. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. Power efficiency. Yay, power efficiency is now increased. So it's 4 times faster and it's a bit more power efficient. Okay, so no yield module for that. Yes, normally I only get access to 2 sides. That's the 2 full upgrade sides, not the side that's got the large and small connector on it, because I generally pack them like in a row and then put the upgrades top and bottom, and I usually only use the speed modules in that case. But with that said, I'm going to use a little bit of a, what do they call it, development mode? Space Master. If you've never come across it, I'd suggest looking it up. It's quite handy for a survival game, so you can test things out. Normally, if you're in a survival game, you can enable it and it brings in some of the creative tools. In this case, we're in a creative environment, so we don't need that. We need this, our spawn menu. So I'm going to put in here iron ore, and we're going to just dump 100,000 of it in there. Spawn it inside the target, and you'd hear it whirl up straight away. So if we just jump into its inventory, and as you can see, it's ploughing through that really quite fast. Now at this stage there is nothing moving it out of the refinery, it's all just building up in the refinery, as you can see. We can drag that out into our large container at any time, and it will just continue to whirl away there. Let's just close you up again. Now, as for our assembler, let me just jump over here. Interact, production. Alright, 1,000. We'll just get it to build 1,000. Okay, whilst I'm here, I'll just highlight this for you. There are 4 different ways of moving stacks of items, or assigning stacks of items. We can just single click, which is just one, like that. There's just a click on it. Okay, or we can assign a group of 10, which is pressing down our control key and clicking on it, and it assigns 10 at a time, as you can see. The second method is pressing and holding shift whilst we're clicking, and that assigns 100 at a time. Yeah, I'll let it build down. And the third method is both those keys in combination, which I believe, the way I view it anyway, holding both of them acts as a multiplier. So it's 10 times 100, which of course is 1,000, and that gives us our 1,000. So it's control and shift together, and a single click, and we're now assigning 1,000 items. Now the third method of moving inventories is, okay, let's just jump over here. That works good. Refinery, assembler. Alright, let's say we want this whole stack. We want to take it into our inventory here. Now in a survival game you can't carry that many items, but in a creative game you can carry as much as you like. What you can do is literally double click it. When you double click it, it moves the entire stack into your inventory. Now if we were to double click it from our personal inventory here, since the first item on our list here is our large container, it transfers that straight into our large container. Double click it, pulls it back out, single click moves it back in. Now as before, we can single click, okay, it does nothing. Click and drag, moves the whole stack, it's the same deal. Right click and drag, we can select an amount. However, we can press our control key and click once, and we move 10 at a time. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, etc. We can press and hold our shift key and click on the item, and we're moving in 100 at a time. We can control and shift and click, and we're now moving 1,000 at a time. Or we can double click and move the entire stack at once. So that's 3 or 4 different ways you can actually move your items around. I find it's really quite handy. You may not want, there we go, let's take all of those. Right, you may not want all of those items, you might only want 10 or 20 steel plates. Rather than filling your inventory up, you can, okay, we need 20 steel plates, well, let's grab 30 to be safe. So you press your control key and click it 3 times, and there you've just picked up 30 steel plates. You go and use the 25 that's required to build a single light armor block, Yes, you've got 5 left over. You come back here, you double click it and then assign it back into your cargo container. It's a very efficient way of actually moving items around. Okay. Now, alright, let's see what else we've got. Okay, they are used for shipbuilding. Oh, okay, yes. Now, we need to worry about a source of power. Okay, now as you saw, we put a reactor in here. But let's say, in a survival game, let's say uranium is a commodity you don't have a lot of, and there's a chance of it running out. So you want an additional source of power. Well, we're going to move out of here. Nice mountain. I'm going to move over here, just create another bit of a platform here. There we go. And we're going to put in a battery source. Well, a battery backup, I suppose is another way of putting it. So, okay, I'll just press G to bring up our toolbar config, which gives us access to all of our tools. We'll just double click the battery, which will put it into our toolbar. We'll also put in a solar panel or two. Also double click that. You notice it assigns it down here to the next available slot. So let's start with our battery. That's number 4. And let's put several batteries in. The orientation really doesn't matter. They've got connectors on 4 of the 6 sides. Now in a creative game you notice they're charging up completely. In a survival game they do actually start with a trickle charge in them, just like most batteries you buy. So you need some method of being able to charge them up. In this case we have a reactor in there attached to this same platform, this same grid is what it's called. And any reactors on this same grid will charge any batteries connected to the exact same grid. Now, reactors are great if you've got the uranium for them. If you don't, or if you are at risk of that uranium running out, then we can make use of solar energy. There's lots of it here. So we can put in a solar panel or 2. Here's our solar panels. Let's just stick one over there, stick one over there. That gets our energy from that way. Not sure which way the sun is going. Well, we're only getting 2 bars out of it. Well, let's put another solar panel there and there. They're at 90 degrees to one another, and that should, that should get pretty much the sun from any angle as it tracks across the sky. That's from my experience at least. Now, we have a nice little indicator down the bottom here that gives you an idea of how much sun they're getting and how much charge they're generating at this stage. It's about 50%. We'll give it a bit of time. That should build up a bit further as the sun tracks further across. And now if our reactor was to die because of lack of uranium, then during the day at least, these solar panels would trickle and charge into our batteries. In fact, you can even set some batteries, here we go, some batteries to recharge only, which means they will draw charge into them and fully charge up, but you can't draw that energy back out. So you have to be mindful of that. And once they are fully charged, you need to come back in and turn that off. That way that power then becomes available to the rest of the grid for powering your refineries and your arc furnaces and your assemblers and all of your conveyor system. With no power, in fact we can even demonstrate this. No, it means taking everything out. If I was to remove all of these power sources, then these would go red to indicate that there is no power to power them. All of these would go red to indicate that there's no power powering them. So red is bad, green is good, like in most things. Okay, so that's got an alternative source of power installed, as well as some battery storage. Now, there's also a lot of other things. Let's see what else we've got in our toolbar config here. Thrusters, they're for vehicles, all of those there. Ore detector. Let's put in an ore detector and an antenna. Oh, and even a beacon. That way it makes it easier to find things. Now the beacon, we'll stick that up on top here. Yeah, we'll put that there. Beacon does exactly as the name implies. It's a beacon. It lets you know, as you can see, it gives you an easy reference to actually find it. It's like a GPS coordinate, but it's specifically an item in the game. An ore detector, as the name implies, it actually detects ore in the local vicinity. The large grid ore detector has got I believe a radius of 150 meters, so any ore within 150 meters will get highlighted. So we'll put that in there as well. And our antenna, which allows us to broadcast information, allows us to access the grid from a distance. We're actually just going to stick that right on top there. Keeps them all together. And as you can see, we've all got these little white markers that have shown up all over the place. It's our ore detector hard at work. We've got cobalt, we've got uranium, and we've got silver, all in the local vicinity. And there's ice. Well, we know there's ice. We're sitting on a gigantic, big, frozen ice lake. So we know there's ice. But we've got cobalt over in that direction, uranium's in the same sort of direction, and silver is over in this direction here. Which silver is about 33 meters down there, which is not too bad. So it's quite close. This is not a bad ore deposit here, especially the uranium for our power. Very essential to have. Silver is really good to have as well. It's for creating reactors. So both of those are really good. Cobalt is nice and essential for a lot of other components as well. So this is not a bad spot to set up a base. Now let's see what else. Okay. Yes, I'll show that as well. I just hit K to bring up our terminal, which just shows ourselves, and we can get access to what faction we're a member of, our GPS coordinates, as you know. Control panel, well, we're not connected to anything. Production, not connected to anything. Inventory is what we're currently carrying. But up the top here, you see we're looking at myself, Caladan. If we change that over, or click on that I should say, or even click on remote access, we see this other item called Static Grid 3774. Now you might think, well, what on earth is that? Well, let's have a look. Let's come over to one of these control panels, which is connected to all of this, which is called a grid. And let's hit K to bring up it. And if we notice at the top here, we're now looking at Static Grid 3774. So that actually is relating to our base here. So our base internally in the game is called Static Grid 3774. Now we don't have to leave it like that. That is very difficult to understand. Yeah. Oh, what is Static Grid 3774? Oh, how do I know that that's my base? Well, if we come under our Info tab, and down the bottom here, we've got, well, it's called Ship Name, or it should be probably retitled Grid Name. And since we own the entire grid, I wasn't going to touch on ownership just yet, but we will. Owner, me. That's Static Grid. This is the battery I'm interfacing with. Now let's say this battery over here is not owned by me. Ta-da, it's owned by nobody. That's owned by me. That's owned by nobody. That's owned by me. So there is one item in this grid that I don't own. So if we come back into here and go into our Info tab, it will let us change it. Okay. In the past, if you didn't own it, you couldn't change it. Yes. Well, if the majority of the grid is owned by something other than yourself, whether it be Space Pirates or nobody, which is neutral, you notice we've lost access to our ship name or grid name. But if we come back over to our control panel, I just Control A to select everything, we can actually change the ownership back to me. I now own it. And now when we go to info, we've got ship name, and it's got that same static grid 3774 in there. Well, I'm going to change that. I don't think I can remember that. I might have more than one base. So we're going to call this SC Beginner Base. And we hit OK. And now when we close out of this and come back into it, it now says SE Beginner Base up here. Lovely. Now if we move away and bring up our personal terminal, we're looking at ourselves again, but now when we have a look at the drop down, it shows us SE Beginner Base. Now you think, well, how can we access the base, the grid, when we're not interfacing with anything on the grid? That's because our lovely spacesuit here, there we go, has got a small inbuilt transmitter. There's nothing to indicate that, other than we can interface with grids in the close or local proximity. I think it's only got 100 or 200 meter radius range. It's not very big, so as long as we're within that range of an antenna, we can access that particular grid. Now we can actually turn that off. Now if you notice over on the left hand side of the screen of our HUD, our heads up display, we've got the 4 icons across the top. I think it looks like a helmet with the J above it. The other fun little icon with the 2 V's at the bottom with the X, that's our jetpack. We've got this O, and this almost looks like a Wi-Fi symbol, doesn't it? Well, that is our broadcasting, or our built-in antenna, and L of course is our lights. And if we just press L for example, we can't actually see, you notice, well, we can actually see the light going on and off around his head. So that's, and you notice that the icon greys out when we turn it off. But the same with the O. If we press O, it goes a little grey, very faint to see. Brighter, a little bit dim. Brighter, a little bit dim. That's turning on and off. And when it's turned off, like it is now, if we go into our terminal, you notice we have no access to anything else. We go into remote access, and you notice it's fully greyed out. It's not available. We can't access any of it. Can't access this terminal or anything like that. So we come back over here, we press O to turn on our local broadcasting, our local antenna. We go back into the terminal, go to remote access, and now it's all highlighted. It shows us the distance it is, and we can click on the terminal to bring up its terminal. And now we can see everything that's on that local base, that one that we're close to at least. That's the antenna, and let's just call that antenna, you see, beginner, yeah, that'd be right, beginner base, and we'll extend its range up to 50 kilometers, 50,000 meters, so it can broadcast a long way. Come down to our beacon, yes, we can call it the same, beginner base, and we'll extend its radius again out to 50 kilometers. So now antenna SE beginner base, beacon beginner base, and we've also got our own GPS marker called home base. That one is visible anywhere. We can however turn that one off. We can just click on it and say don't display and don't show in HUD. It's still there, so we can still find it anytime, but we don't have to display it all the time. And those are visible for up to 50 kilometers away. Once we get outside that range, we will no longer see them. But if we are still within 50 kilometers, and that includes being up in space, then we'll be able to see where this is. We do have the GPS coordinate to fall back on if we do go out of range, but whilst we're in that 50 kilometer distance range, then they work quite well. Okay, now I'm just going to leave it at that. It's only going to be our usual, about usual half hour. Next time round, I think we'll have a look at, what have we got in here? These other items like doors and stairs, they're pretty self-explanatory, and how to use them. I think most people know how to use a door and how to use stairs. We've got sensors, we've got cameras, sound blocks, so you can actually generate sound. Control panels. Now, control panel, that blue thing there, that's a control panel. Most of your items actually come with them. Sometimes you might build a grid that you haven't actually placed any items in yet, but you still want to access the actual terminal of the grid. You can actually place, and I will actually place one. You can actually place a control panel like that, just anywhere on a block, and you can now interface with that whole grid. So you don't actually have to have any items on the grid. You can build up the framework, you can place a terminal, and still be able to access and rename it and all that sort of stuff. But yes, for now we'll keep it at that. Maybe next episode we'll look at the basics of, I don't know, maybe let's build a mining ship. We've got some really nice resources here that we might want to mine, and rather than doing it by hand, let's see about building a ship or some sort of mining platform, if you will, that'll let us actually very rapidly mine some of those resources. But until then, thank you for watching, and I shall talk to you again.